Hello everybody, thank you so much for coming to this event about aquaponics. I'm sure some of you have already some knowledge about aquaponics, maybe some of you just want to discover. So today is just going to be an introduction to this way of growing food, which is aquaponics. So just before starting the presentation, yeah, sure, go ahead. Yeah, if you want to move closer, feel welcome. We still have some chairs here. So just to give a bit of context, in 2019, the world faces big water stress. And we got this data from the World Resource Institute. We had 17 countries that were in extreme water stress, which means that the population didn't have enough water for the agriculture or even for themselves to drink, to take shower, which is a big concern. And when we look at the area where we had water stress around the world, we can see that all around the equator we had a big issue, but all Europe was affected and Australia was affected as well. That was 2019. Since this year, we had 3 years in a row with more water stress, more water challenges around the world. And this year, last summer in Europe, there were dramatic drought. The crop was affected. The farmers were not able to water the crop as they should, and they lost up to 40% of the crop. So it's a massive issue that we are facing all around the planet. And in this regard, I think aquaponics can be helpful. So we will see that today. So the objective for this session, we got 4 points. First, we want to understand what is aquaponics, understand how it works, see what type of food can be grown in aquaponics, and finally, we're going to see the main benefits of aquaponics. So to start this, I would like to ask you a question. What is aquaponics? For those who know a bit about this technique, are you able to tell me roughly what it's based on? Do you know? Can you give me a definition of aquaponics? Someone?
It's a system where you use fish and plants to cycle nutrients and kind of help each other out.
Yeah, exactly, yes. That's a very nice definition. I mean, we will see that we can go a bit further, but in what you explained, you mentioned the fish and the plants working together in a beneficial cycle. So aquaponics is a polyculture where we grow different crops together. And to highlight this fact, I just want to show you those two systems. So here on the left side, you got a forest, and on the right side, you got a monoculture field. So let's just have a close look at those two systems. So on the monoculture field, it can be any type of field, can be corn, anything. It's always grown the same way. We use a lot of fossil fuel, big machines. We use a lot of pesticides, unfortunately, because when you grow only one crop, you always got some pests or competition, some weeds that are trying to grow. So a lot of pesticides are used, and the crop that you're going to harvest hasn't been grown in the best conditions. The farmer is just giving what the plant needs to grow, so it can't develop the best vitamins. Also, when we grow food in monoculture, very often it's harvesting a bit young, and then it's placed in fridges for transport, so the vitamins can be expressed at their best. If we compare now a forest, in a forest we have a huge production, a lot of plants that are growing together. There is no human intervention, no fossil fuel, of course. The forest is growing by itself, no pesticide, and everything is healthy. Everything is growing together, but everything seems healthy. You will not see many sick plants in a forest, because as soon as there is a sick plant, another one is going to take over, and you're going to have some organisms that are going to manage the plant that is sick, to consume it, and to release some nutrients for the rest of the forest. So that's a natural cycle. And that's the key. That's what we use in aquaponics. It's really a natural cycle, a virtuous cycle, where we use the waste of one living creature to grow another one. So here's a bit of the history of aquaponics. So it's a very old technique. It's been developed mainly in Asia. Some people also talk about the Babylon gardens. So there we can see the paddy field. In the paddy field, of course, they grow rice. Rice is a semi-aquatic plant, so it's grown in some water. And back in thousands of years ago, they thought, okay, why don't we introduce some fish into the paddy field? Since it's an aquatic environment, maybe we can grow some fish there. So the fish we can see on the bottom right corner there, it's a fish called tilapia. It's a tropical fish. It's very well adapted to the paddy field environment. When they introduced the fish into the paddy field, they found out that the fish was basically eating all the insects that were normally growing on the rice. So it was managing the disease or the pests that could damage the rice crop. But in the same time, as the fish was consuming those pests, it was releasing some nutrients into the water. The fish waste can become a nutrient for the rice. So the rice was growing much better. And so the farmer, at the end of the season, they were harvesting the rice, and they were harvesting more rice than in a classic paddy field. And at the same time, they were harvesting the fish protein, which is very valuable. So that was a win-win. And that's really what we use this type of system that's the type of system that we use in aquaponics in a smaller scale, in a more denser scale. Now, when the word aquaponics comes from two techniques. So one technique is aquaculture, as most of you know, so it's fish production. So what you can see on the top right here is a trout farm. So all the dark area, that's where you can see the fish population. So you can see some area, you got a very high fish population. And on the bottom, this is hydroponics. And here it's monoculture as well. You got tomatoes that are growing, but they are not growing on the soil. They are growing soilless. It's just a substrate that is there, a media, with some water. And in the water, they add the nutrients. So the plant has all the nutrients that it needs to grow in quantity. But it doesn't use any natural cycle. Those two systems are monoculture. In aquaponics, some people think it's the association of fish and plants, and that's where the word comes from, right? At the beginning of aquaculture, aqua, and the end of hydroponics. So aquaponics is the association of those two. But it's not just the association of two monoculture. Then we come in a beneficial cycle, in a polyculture, and we use the waste of one to grow the other. So how does aquaponics work? So we can start from this area, which is the logo of my Aquaponics Revolution. So in this you have fish, plants that we talked about, but something that is extremely important, and that's really paramount in aquaponics, is the bacteria. We don't see the bacteria, so often we don't think about them, but they are really the link between recycling the fish waste into plant nutrients. So those three elements are extremely important in aquaponics. And how do we keep them in our aquaponics system? We have one fish tank where we keep our fish. On top of this, we got a media. In the media, we got, a grow bed. In the grow bed, we got some media. And on this media, we got plants growing, but we also got a lot of bacteria growing on this media. So the media is a support for the roots of the plants, but it's also a support for the bacteria because the bacteria need a support to live on. And then that's how it looks like when you put it in place. Here, you see you got a bench, but in this bench here you got a fish tank, so you can lift it, you got the fish underneath. Here this is a grow bed, and on top you got the plants growing, and inside here you got billions of bacteria doing the magic of transforming the fish waste into plant nutrients. So now it's going to be a little bit more technical. You don't need to remember all this, but just the principle. It's what we call the cycle of life or the nitrogen cycle. So it's just a representation of what's happening when you feed your fish and where the nutrients are going. So you start by feeding your fish with fish food pellets, or it's an example, but you can also use just worms or whatever you have in your garden if you find insects. You feed your fish. The fish, they're going to consume the food. They're going to grow. But some of the food is not used, such as us. Right? When we eat some food, we use some of the energy for our metabolism. But unfortunately, we have some waste. We go to the toilet, the fish do the same thing into the water, and they release organic matters. Most of it is composed of ammonia. Ammonia, unfortunately, is extremely toxic for the fish. So that's the reason why when you have an aquarium, you can't just keep the water. You have to do some water changes because those elements are very toxic. So fortunately, we got some bacteria, Nitrosomonas, that are transforming this ammonia into nitrite, and other bacteria, nitrobacteria, that are transforming the nitrite into nitrate. And nitrate, as most of you, if you are gardeners, you know, nitrate are the source of nutrient for the plants. You know, when you use a fertilizer for your plants, some nutrients, you put NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. That's the three main elements. Nitrogen is the one that we need in the highest quantity. And in this system, just by feeding our fish, growing some fish that we will be able to eat, we're going to produce a free nutrient for the plants.
Where does the bacteria come from?
So,
change the ammonia into...
Sure. So bacteria, they are called ubiquitous. They live everywhere. We got bacteria on ourselves. There are bacteria everywhere around this room. As I said before, we have a media in our tank, you know, in our grow bed, a media, which is a rock. And here I can show you some examples of media. So that's what some people use. This is just a normal pebble. So here you can imagine the bacteria are able to live all on the surface of this material, yeah? Now, that's something you can use, but what I recommend is to use some rock more porous, because there are holes inside, so the bacteria can go inside and live inside. So you can hold way more bacteria if you use this type of media, yeah? Because there are holes, so the bacteria can live inside. It's like comparing a house with a big building with a lot of apartments inside. It takes the same surface on the soil, but you can fit way more people in a big building. So this type of media, that's what I recommend. And other people use this. You probably use this as well in gardening. It's a clay ball. It's very aesthetic. It's smooth. You can put your hands through. And it's porous, so you got also bacteria inside. But the difference is the price. This is $1 per liter, and this is Korea. This is, you will pay $60 per cubic meter. So this is way cheaper. So if you do a big aquaponic system, that's what I recommend. Very efficient, very cost efficient. Now, if you have a small one and you want it very aesthetic, you can buy the clay balls. They are called expanded clay balls. Possibly, we will have a look after. But it's way possible, yeah. I don't know if you want to have a look at those ones. I would love to pass them through, but I'm not sure with COVID restrictions what we are allowed to. So I will leave them here if you want to come have a look at the end. So that's the cycle. I think it's the principle is, I think is simple. Then you don't need to remember all the names. But here we are. We start with fish. We grow a fish, and from the waste of the fish, we grow some plants. And because the plants are growing, they remove this nitrate from the water. So the water that is going back to the fish is purified. So that's why we don't need to change the water that often.
So the input really is the fish pellets.
That's correct.
What sort of quantity of fish pellets do you need?
Yeah.
Sort of per kilo.
Yeah.
Is that always economic because it's cheap?
No, it's not always cheap. The fish food, if you look at the fish that is produced in aquaculture, 50% of the cost when you go and buy a fish at the fish shop, 50% of the cost is due to the fish food. Yeah. You know, the farmer needs to feed the fish. So it's not cheap. Now, the beauty is that in a fish farm, when they give the fish food to the fish, the only aim is to produce the fish, and then the rest is a waste, and it is a cost for the environment, because when you release too much waste into the environment, even if it's nitrate, which is a great nutrient for the plants, if you release too much nitrate around, it becomes a pollution then, because then you're going to have a lot of algae or bacteria that are going to eat this, and if there are too many of them, they will consume all the oxygen around, the oxygen will drop, and all the aquatic environment around is going to die. That's what we call a eutrophisation. It happens in a lot of rivers, and that's something we need to be conscious of. So yeah, in aquaculture, feeding the fish can be a challenge. Here, we use the fish food to grow the fish, but then whatever waste they don't use, we grow some plants from. So we win twice, if you want. You know, for the same quantity of fish food, we're going to produce way more, because we produce the fish, but we also produce the plants. Yes?
So before you said that you can use the worms,
Yes.
If you've got a worm farm at home,
Yeah.
is it enough just to give them worms from the worm farm?
I mean, you can give them the worms. That's excellent because the worms are an excellent food, very high in protein, very high in vitamins, great for the fish. Now it depends on the setup you have. If you have a very small setup with just 1 or 2 goldfish, that's probably going to be fine. But if you want to produce a significant quantity of food, if you want 20 kilo of trout, a little worm bin is not going to do the job.
If you're just doing it on a small scale at home,
Yeah.
the food that you get, I mean, the worms that you get from the worm farm would be enough.
Possibly, yes. If it's a small.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's plugs and worms. I mean,
Yeah, the problem you will have as well with your worm farm is I imagine you will have some times where you have higher production than others. Like in winter, you probably don't produce much worms because it's cold. And in summer, you produce way more. Not cold enough? So you produce all year round? Very good.
So I guess you'll know the quantity of fish food you provide. I mean, if you've got 10 fish, you know how much to give.
That's right, yes. So what is important here is to keep a balance between the quantity of fish you have and the quantity of bacteria you have. Because what you really need to do here is to be able to transform all the toxic elements, so the ammonia and later on the nitrate, to be able to, the nitrite, to be able to transform them in nitrate. If you have too many fish and not enough bacteria, the bacteria will be able to eat some, but they will be limited. And therefore, you will have an accumulation of ammonia or an accumulation of nitrite. And that's very toxic for the fish. So you can't have this. You always need to have a good ratio between the quantity of fish and the quantity of bacteria. And now you will ask me, how do you know that? Well, there is a ratio that I like to give. The quantity of bacteria is determined by the volume of media that you're going to offer. Basically, the bacteria, what they need a support. If they have enough support, they're going to colonize it because they got food, they got water, and they got a good temperature. So what I say is that for 50 liters of media, efficient media, so either this one or that one, for 50 liters of media, you can have 1 kilo of fish. That's the ratio that I give. And then the quantity of food that you will give to your fish will be dependent on the species of fish, the size of the fish. 1 kilo of small fish will eat more than 1 kilo of one big fish. Yeah, because they grow, the growth is higher. And also on the temperature of the water. So now, I'm just going to pass on this one, but that's really the principle of how aquaponics works. I just want to highlight something as well. We talk a lot about bacteria in our grow bed that are doing the magic of transforming the fish waste into plant nutrients. But bacteria is one element, but actually when you grow an aquaponic system, you will find that's a whole ecosystem that is taking place. And you got all sorts of life that are coming. So here, normally I got a video that I can play. I'm just going to try if it works. Yes, it does. So here you can see that's my media, and you see a lot of insects, worms that are moving around. The bacteria, they are living here. They form what we call a biofilm on the surface of this media. So media that we have here today is dry. When it's in the aquaponics, it's in an area where the water is coming up and down. It's wet, and you got all forms of animals that are growing there. And they all help to break down the fish waste, so the fish poop, if you want, into some nutrients, the nutrients that we just talked about before. So now, what does aquaponics look like? So if you are familiar with this site here, you've probably seen the aquaponics system at the back. We're going to have a look after for those of you who have a bit of time. But very often, that's what aquaponics looks like. So the one that we have at the back is an IBC aquaponics system, close to this one. It's just a black one, which is a bit better from an algae perspective. That's what we can see in most people's backyard. So you always got a fish tank, as we said before, and the grow bed on top. And then you got a water pump in the fish tank that is raising the water into the grow bed. So that's what I would call A-level, where you want to start aquaponics. You can start with this because it's extremely cheap. This is what we call an IBC, intermediate bulk container. You can buy this out of a factory for maybe $50 to $90. You just need to make sure it's a food-grade equipment. You don't want to buy something that had chemicals inside or nasty stuff, because whatever is inside is going to finish in your plate, right? It's going to either finish in the fish or in the plant. So you have to be very careful. You want to make sure it's food grade. Some of them are used for the food industry, for colorant, or for flavor, so they are fine. But you don't want one with mineral oil inside or thing like this, even if you clean it. Huh? So now that's level 1. Then you can improve a bit those type of things to make them look a bit better. So that's the same exactly one with Haitian around. This one has got Haitian with a little greenhouse on top. And then you can try to do some funny things. Here I try to put a little window on one, so you can see the red fin. It looks a bit better. And then if you start with this and it works and you like the idea of producing fish and you are able to manage it, then I really highly recommend to go for something a bit more durable in time, but also a bit more ornamental. So I got those type of systems. They are called EcoFlex. That's the one I showed you before on the principle. So you got a bench and the plants growing at the back. And then recently, I developed a new type of aquaponics system that I call the holistic aquaponics, where now the aquaponics system is completely integrated into the backyard. So here you have a big pond with trout inside, and at the back you got grow beds. So we hardly see them, but here at the back there is a grow bed with the veggies growing on it. That's the next level. You have to be aware that the bigger the setup and the easier it is to manage. So it's hard to understand. I mean, it's not hard to understand, but it's not. It doesn't necessarily make sense at the beginning. But when you think about it, when you have a small system, we need to keep a good balance between the fish population and the vegetables population and the bacteria. And on a small system, it can be very quick to lose 1 or 2 fish and to be off balance or to feed a bit too much. While in a big system, you got big volumes. So even if you feed a bit too much, the system will be able to absorb and it becomes way easier. Also, it's an open ecosystem. So then it's going to be very rich. Every year, you're going to have new animals. And the richer it becomes and the more balanced it becomes and the more sturdy it becomes. You know, it's way easier to manage this type of big system with time than a very small setup. That's
the number of fish in this.
so you know how many fish you have in at the beginning when you buy them. So let's say you put 100 fish inside, and then every time you harvest one, you can take record and you say, okay, I remove 2 fish and remove 1 fish. If you have one that died by chance, you also note it, and you know approximately the number of fish you have. And what we do as well, we do average weight. So from time to time, we catch some fish, we weigh them. So you take a scale, take a bucket of water, you catch 10 fish, you put them in your bucket, and then you see the weight of those 10 fish, and then you divide the weight by 10, and you know the average weight of your fish. Then the average weight you multiply by the number of fish you have in the pond, and you know your fish biomass. So it tells you if it's a good time for you to harvest some fish or if you can let them grow, because you are far from the limit of the system based on what I said before, 50 liters of media for 1 kilo of fish.
Do you have issues with breeding them?
With breeding them?
Yeah, can you add more population to it?
So breeding is not an issue in a way that if the breed is good, you have never too many fish in your system. You can always fish them away. But breeding trout is a bit technical. They are not going to breed by themselves in the pond. You need to take them, to take care of them. Basically, you need to do an external reproduction. So you need to harvest the eggs on the side and everything. I did it this year with success. I can show you some videos after if you have time. Sorry?
Just buy small fish?
Yes. So you can go to the fish farm to Buxton trout. We got a few fish farms around Melbourne, and you go there and you buy what we call trout fingerlings. They are small trout, and that's the one you want, and you put in your system, and you raise them until they reach the plate size. So a trout will reach plate size in 9 months. Now, if you go for other type of fish, in Australia, we got other native fish called silver perch, for instance. Silver perch will take 4 years to reach plate size. So depending on the species you work with, They don't have the same growth. Some fish grow very fast, some others a bit less. We will see that just now, actually, the fish requirements. So, we got a wide variety of spaces that we can grow around. The first parameter actually is not the first one I write here, it's the second one, is the temperature. Is the temperature that I'm going to offer to my fish going to be appropriate to the spaces I want to have? So, if you live around Melbourne, you know that in winter it can be quite cold. Not like where I come from in France, where it can be -20. But here you have sometimes -1, -4 maybe. So you need to take this in consideration. The fish I showed you before, the tilapia, from the paddy field, is a tropical fish that needs a water that is 24, 23 degrees the lowest. So you can't grow this fish here. Same, a lot of people love barramundi, which is an excellent fish, but that's a tropical fish as well. So you can't grow those fish here. In Melbourne, we need to keep fish that are adapted to the environment. So if you go fishing, you know what type of fish are present in the area. Trout, no problem. Well, I say no problem, you have to be careful in summer. If you have an in-ground pond, no problem. But if it's off-ground, if it's full sun, if the temperature is above 22 degrees, they start to struggle a bit. And anything above 27 degrees, the fish is going to die. So you still need to manage your water temperature. So that's one thing, water temperature. So I really recommend to see what's growing around, what type of native fish we have. Oxygen level, the oxygen level is important for some fish. Some fish are very demanding, some others are less. So if you grow goldfish, you don't really mind about that. They are very well adapted to low oxygen concentration. Well, you don't want to go to the extreme, but as we understand, we got a little water pump that is raising the water to the grow rate. So when the water comes back, it kind of splash. And this is going to make some mix between the atmosphere and the gas concentration into the water. And it's going to balance it. So it's going to supply some oxygen, which is way enough for goldfish. Now, if you want to have trout, as we said before, it's good to have a little air pump. You know, the same air pumps that we can see in aquariums very often. The power consumption of this type of equipment is extremely low because it doesn't require much energy to blow a bit of air. And it's very good for the fish. It makes them very more comfortable and relaxed. You know that a fish that is in good condition is going to have a better food ratio conversion. So basically, the food that it's going to eat is going to be converted much better into flesh. If a fish is stressed, it's not going to grow well, and you're going to waste your fish food. Then you got the water parameters that we just described before. So ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, and the pH. So all the fish, they have some requirements, and they have a range of acceptancy. So some fish are known to be hardy. They resist to a bit, like to beginner's mistake, let's say. If you make a mistake, they will recover. Some other fish are a bit more sensitive, and they are more for experienced people. Now let's have a look at the requirements of the bacteria, because bacteria are present, and they are extremely important, as you know. So the first thing, as we said before, they need a support. So a good support is a media. So you need to select your media correctly. Oxygen, they need oxygen as well. They need an appropriate temperature, and they need nutrients. So nutrients, that's the ones we saw before in the representation of the nitrogen cycle. So we are talking about ammonia and nitrite. And as we understand, in aquaponics, we don't need to feed our bacteria. They are fed by the fish waste. So that's the beauty of aquaponics. And finally, the pH for bacteria. The bacteria that we want in aquaponics, Nitrosomonas nitrobacter, they are bacteria that like a pH that is a bit high. So a pH that is neutral, that's fine, but you don't want to go too acidic in terms of pH. And now the plant's requirements. So this one, I don't think I need to develop it today too much because you are all experts in gardening. So we got sunlight, of course, very important. CO2, oxygen, the temperature, that's a big one for people who begin, not for you, but for people who want to start aquaponics who didn't have an experience in gardening before. Of course, you can't grow tomato in winter in Melbourne, such as for the fish. You need to have your crop adapted to the temperature and to the season. So whatever your neighbor gardener is growing, you will probably be able to grow in aquaponics, but make sure you plant it at a good time. They need a support, so as we saw in aquaponics, that's the media. and nutrients, so nitrate that is coming from the fish waste, and minerals. And here I need to stress it because minerals in a classic garden, they come from the soil. You got worms, the worms are coming deep, they are going deep in the soil, and then they work around the rocks that are deep, the mother rock. And they basically break it down and they raise it to the surface. And that's how they mix the soil, and they always bring minerals to the surface available for the plants. Unfortunately, in aquaponics, we don't have those worms working because we are working, as you understand, the fish tank is sealed and the grow bed on top is sealed as well. So we have worms in the grow bed, but they are not able to bring minerals. So we need to add minerals in our system. Of course, in your fish food, you have a lot of minerals because it's made out of fish protein. 50% of fish food generally is made out of fish meal. Fish meal is made out of fish carcass, and inside there is all the colon bone of the fish that is very high in phosphorus. You got a lot of potassium, so you got a lot of minerals already there. But as you know, there are 20 to 30 essential minerals to the plant. So sometimes we need to supplement the system. So what I use rock dusts. Some of you gardeners here, you probably already use rock dust when you see deficiencies on your plants. How do you see deficiencies? Well, you see a plant that has got some yellow leaves, some problems. Well, it can be a problem of watering, but in aquaponics, it's never a problem of watering because they have access to water all the time. So if you see some yellow marks on the plant, that's a deficiency. It's probably due to a deficiency of minerals, so I really highly recommend to add rock dusts in this event to fulfill the needs of your plants. Sure.
Do you add the rock dust to the grow bed?
No, I add the rock dust into the bell siphon. So the bell siphon is one element that is crucial. We're going to see it in the other system that is present here. In the bell siphon, you basically got the water that is sucked here, and that's the best area to add your rock dust because it's going to be mixed with the water. Otherwise, you can put it in a bottle, put your rock dust, a few grams in a bottle of water, you mix it, and then you can put it into the fish tank. No problem. But you want to put it where it's going to be agitated and mixed with the water. Otherwise, if it just settled down the grow bed, it may stay there without movement and take time to dilute. So it's better to help it as much as possible. So now what kind of fish can we grow? We talked about it a little bit before. So here we have the example of the tilapia that we saw before. This one is grown in Indonesia, in a lot of Asian countries actually. It's a fish that is offering excellent growth and accepts very poor water parameters. What I mean by that is that it's a very hardy fish. So if you live in a tropical country, that's the type of fish you want to grow and experiment with, but not in Melbourne, unless you are in a greenhouse and you heat it, but then it becomes completely non-sustainable and non-efficient economically. And they are illegal. That's completely right, exactly. It can become a very big invasive species, so they make it illegal, such as the carp. The carp in Victoria is illegal as well. So if you fish a carp in a pond, you are not allowed to put it back, and you are not allowed to take it at home and put it in a pond. Still, you have a lot of people who have koi carp because they are very nice, really good-looking fish, but it's still illegal, so you can get fined with it. Now, one of the options is to go for ornamental fish. So here we got goldfish spawning on strings. So that's a way we use to harvest the eggs. They spawn on the eggs. They spawn on the string. Then you can collect it and put it in another tank. If you leave the eggs there, all the fish are going to eat the little larvae. So that's one fish you can use, goldfish. Unfortunately, it's not the best eating fish, yeah. So it depends what you want to do. If you just like to have an ornamental setup, a lot of people nowadays are vegan or vegetarian. So in this case, you can have goldfish. They're going to have a very good environment to live, and then you can still eat the crop that is grown from the fish poop. So all the vegetables, you can still eat it. So
what happens if you've got that and you get too many fish? Do you take them out?
Yes, if you get too many fish for the system, you need to harvest some. So either you harvest them to eat them, either you give them around. A lot of people are looking for fish, for aquariums, for ponds, for dams, or for aquaponics. There's not an issue to offer fish around, never an issue. You rarely have too many fish. So here, that's the goldfish, but all the fish around, they are silver perch. We will talk about this after. So now, one of the most interesting fish in aquaponics is a rainbow trout that is growing extremely fast. So I said before, it can reach plate size in 9 months. And then if you keep it for 2 years, it will reach over 1.5 kilo. And if you keep it for several years, it will reach 6 kilos. So it's a solid fish. So that's a fast-growing fish, but a bit technical. It's a predator fish. It's got a behavior. So there are a lot of things to be aware of when you want to grow this type of fish. Then we got the silver perch that we just saw before. So those ones are just a bit bigger. So this is a very hardy fish. That's a native fish to Australia. So it's adapted to the water temperature. However, there are 2 things to keep in mind when you want to grow this fish. The first one is the growth rate, as we said before, 4 years to reach plate size. And the other one is they are normally a white fish. So the trout is a fish that has been domesticated. So if you want to handle trout, no problem, you can handle it, put it back in the tank. For them, it's not an issue. For silver perch, it's a bit more tricky. You know, they are white fish. When you handle them, they stress a lot. And also in winter, this type of fish goes deep into the dams. They go deep, and they don't hibernate, but they are in a very special stage where they don't consume energy. They just stay there almost in the mud, and they wait for summer to come back. So in winter, they don't consume energy. If you put it in an aquaponic system, you need to make sure that you are not going to have kids around to bang around in winter. Otherwise, the fish will stress. And because it can't hold so much energy, after a while it will get weak, and it might just get sick, you know. So that's a fish that is a bit tricky. It's hardy in a way from water parameters, but the behavior of the fish, it's a very sensitive, sensible fish.
Do they consume less and create less waste during winter?
That's right. They don't consume food in winter. They stop eating. Yeah. Okay. But the thing is, most of your plants are also growing less in winter, and the bacteria activity, as we saw before, bacteria need a high pH, but they also need a high temperature. When the temperature is lower, their metabolism is slowed down, because all those animals, they are cold-blooded animals. It's completely the opposite to us. We are warm-blooded animals. I don't know if we can say animals, but we are warm-blooded humans. And we eat the same thing in winter, or the same quantity in winter and in summer, because we maintain our body at the same temperature. So our gut system, all the bacteria we have inside, they're always at the same temperature. They can always do their work. For the fish, that's different, because they are cold-blooded animals. In winter, they can't eat the same quantity. Even for trout, which is a cold water fish, in winter they reduce their consumption considerably, but for the silver perch they completely stop at one point. So now you have compromise as well between ornamental fish and good eating fish. Here we have a fish that is called golden trout, and this is a trout that is exactly the same species as a rainbow. You can see actually the rainbow line in the middle. That's the same species, it's just been selected for the colors. That's why we call it golden rainbow trout. Grows extremely fast, and it looks amazing in the pond. Normally I got a video here. You can see here, it's in the tank, that is the bench, so it's a bit in the dark. You can still see the color of the fish with a background that is black. They look really nice. And in the holistic aquaponics that I showed before, the big pond, they look fantastic. That's almost the only fish you can see. I got a lot of trout. I got golden trout, brook trout, rainbow trout. The only real trout that you can see is this one, because they are golden, they are yellow, on the background that is generally dark. So it creates a very nice contrast. So this is good for us, because we want to see our fish, but you need to be careful because the birds as well, they can see the fish. When they are small, it can be tricky. So now what kind of plants can we grow in aquaponics? Well, here, I know most of you are gardeners, so I don't want to spend too much time. I just want to say, most of the time, the plants that you grow in your classic garden, you can grow them in aquaponics, unless the plants that are extreme in terms of pH. You got some plants that really like high pH or low pH. So here in aquaponics, we find a compromise. We try to be at the neutrality in terms of pH, so around 7. So all the plants that can grow between 6 to 8, they will go well in aquaponics. And also, you don't want to grow plants that don't accept moisture. Yeah. Because in aquaponics, let me pass the other slide. So that's the same aquaponics system. We got a fish tank and a grow bed. In the grow bed, we got a device called a bell siphon that is going to flush the water when it reaches a certain time. So the water level is always going up and down. So the roots of the plant can breathe. Yeah? They can breathe the oxygen that is between the media. And when the water level is high, they can consume all the nutrients. But if you grow, let's say, cactus, just to be crazy, you don't want to put cactus there because it's always going to be in contact with moisture, which is not adapted. Even if it can breathe, it's not adapted. So same thing, you always have the question, do you want to grow plants to eat them or herbs, or you want to grow plants for ornamental? But you always got a nice compromise in the middle. This one is a snow pea, special variety of snow pea that is purple and very nice. And then you can also plant some species that are easy growing, but what you never want to do is to go for monoculture. Let's say you only want lettuce or only want one crop. Because then if you have the pest that is coming, that's a disaster. Because we are in aquaponics, as we understand, we got fish, we got plants, but in the middle we got bacteria. If you put any pesticide there, the bacteria will be affected, will kill your cycle, and eventually you will lose your fish because you will have an accumulation of toxic elements into the system. Plus, you definitely don't want to put any pesticide inside because at the end of the day, it's going to finish on the plant or on the fish and you will eat it. So you have to stay away from this. And the reason why you don't want to be in monoculture is because basically you can treat, so you need to rely on natural interaction. So here, for instance, we got a picture from, it's a video that I took in my garden where I had an infestation of aphids. I had a lot of plants around and I left them. Here on the picture, you can see a black hornet spawning into an aphid, but I think I got a video as well. Yeah, so here we got Cephis. I don't know if you know this. This is a surface larvae. She is sucking the aphids, so she's eating the aphids one after the other. And here around, we got the black hornets. So what I'm trying to say here is that we got natural cycles that are happening in all our garden. Let's try to use them as much as we can. If we plant different crops close to each other, the nature is going to manage it. If you plant one crop, you will have some very big troubles to keep up with aphis infestation. Then you can go for a bit more fun crops, such as tomato, all those type of fruit plants, chili. But you need to keep in mind that this is a bit more complex into the needs. You know, to create a fruit, it's way more complex than to create a leaf. So if you start aquaponics, I would recommend for the first few months to start with leafy veggies, so cabbage, lettuce, all those type of things. After 6 months, the ecosystem will start to be developed and you will start to load some organic material in your grow bed. Then you can start to grow some serious fruit plants that are a bit more demanding in terms of nutrients. There are also a number of things that are very interesting in aquaponics. I think it really reconnects people with nature where you, with a very small setup in a garden, you can see a lot of interactions between animals. Even if you have a small setup, here I think the audience is fully aware, but even if you have a small setup, you are not going to feed your family with a small 1 square garden, but what you can do is to harvest few veggies and you mix them, few leaves and you mix them. You drink it straight away. That's a real boost of vitamins. It's much better than going to the chemistry and to buy some pills or to the doctor and eat some medicine. Another thing you can do in aquaponics, very convenient. This environment, the grow bed, is full of nutrients, always moist, and has oxygen. And that's exactly what you need to make some cuttings. So that's a tomato cutting. You see I cut here. I put it for a few weeks in the aquaponics system. You got all the roots are growing. You can do this with a lot of different plants, a lot of different crops, a lot of different trees. If you want to plant a hedge around your house, just put a few cuttings around. After a few months, you can get them away and plant them in the soil. So it's a very good tool as well for normal gardening. So now let's go through the different benefits of aquaponics. I just listed a few. So people like to say there is no weeding. Actually, because we are working on raised beds, so if you experience growing on raised bed, you know that you got less seeds that are coming in. But also, if you have weeds that are coming in, because we are working on a loose media, it's extremely easy to pull them away. There is no compact soil. So there is no real weeding time. Also, there is no watering because thanks to the water pump, this is all kind of automatic. So you don't have to water your plant, and when you water your plant, or the water you put in your system stays in the system. It doesn't go into the soil. You know, in summer, when you try to keep your veggies alive, in Melbourne area, you need to put a lot of water in the soil because it's so dry. You get a lot of water that is wasted. So we don't have this in our aquaponic system. Compared to hydroponics, here we are working with the same principle as we have in a normal garden. The same ecosystem is happening, the same cycle. So the food is extremely tasty if you compare aquaponics to hydroponics. We recreate contact with nature. If you have a small aquaponic system, you will be able to see a lot of animals around, a lot of insects. So I think it's a very, very important thing for humans, especially when you live in the city. So it can be an issue for some gardeners who are used to use pesticides when they see an attack on the crop, but I see it as an advantage. We don't use chemicals, and I think that makes a big difference nowadays when we see all the diseases that are growing on humans. I'm thinking of all types of cancers. You produce your own food, so you produce the food where it's consumed. If you produce it in your backyard, even on a small area, so you don't transport it, it's fresh, it's healthy, full of nutrients, and we use way less water than the classic aquaculture and hydroponics. In hydroponics, they need to add always water in the system, but in aquaculture, it's even worse. Like the trout farm you saw before is taking half of the river, or half, or depending on the size of the river, but it's taking a huge quantity of water and release a lot of wastes at the back. Here in aquaponics, we manage everything. We don't release any waste. And if one day you have too many fish for your system, which we talked about before, I say in this case you need to decrease the fish population. But in the meantime, what you can do is to take some water from your aquaponic system and to water your plant from the classic garden. Because this water is full of nutrients, it's beauty, it's free fertilizer, and when you add new water in your system now, you dilute the concentration, so the fish will feel relaxed. You basically decrease the toxicity for the fish, but you still use all the nutrients to water your garden, so you never lose any water. Well, I say you never lose any water. We still have evaporation, so we need to be clear on that. All plants, as soon as you grow a plant, to live, the plant is going to create some evaporation. So you still lose some water there. And in summer, it can be still significant, but it will always be way less than watering a classic garden or whatever we use in aquaculture.
So
Sure.
the water that you use,
Yeah.
is there a problem then putting in chlorinated water?
Yeah, so the water that we have, the tap water basically, has got chlorine, as you say, and if you put a fish directly into chlorine water, depending on the species, it might have some issues because it's going to attack their mucus and their gills. So what I recommend, if you have an aquaponic system, you need to top up because of the evaporation. What I recommend is to top up 10% at the time. Don't wait for the water to be for the thing to be completely empty. Only 10%. If you add 10% of chlorinated water, it's not going to be an issue because it's going to be diluted in the volume, yeah? So 1 to 9, so it's not going to have a real effect on the fish and on the bacteria, because the bacteria are very sensitive.
Water system, again, it's not an issue.
Sorry?
Because we have fluoride in
Yeah, no, that's fine. So what we do, when we start an aquaponic system, normally we cycle it, so we don't put the fish straight away, we wait for the bacteria to grow. Normally we wait a month, and during this time, all the chlorine is evaporated, and all the kind of chemicals that can be in the water are way less active because they have been diluted into the water, into the volume of the system. All the organic matter that is around is going to dilute the effect. What you really don't want is to empty the system and put all new water from the tap. Now, if one day you have an issue with fish, it can happen. If you mismanage your system and you see that all the fish are dying and there is a toxicity in the water, in this case, yes, you want to empty 50% of your volume and put 50% of new water, because whatever is in the tap is way less toxic than the water that is in the system if the fish are dying. Yeah. And
Excuse
Rainwater is perfect. Rainwater is really good. Yeah, if you can collect rainwater, is really good. You don't want to. You want to add some minerals in the water when you use rainwater because it's very soft, but at least you don't have any chemical inside.
Is that just rock dust?
Sorry?
Chemicals, or just, I mean, nutrients, or just be the rock dust?
Test. Yes, you test your water. So there are some test kits from the aquarium, aquarium shop. And you test ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, the 3 elements we saw before, and you test pH as well. There are 4 elements that we test here. pH in an aquaponic system is always going down due to the natural reactions that are happening in the system. So you always need to top up the system to increase the pH. To do that, it always decreases. Less than 7, exactly. If you leave a system, an aquaponic system, without touching it, without checking your water, slowly it's going to decrease to 6. And 6 is 10 times less basic than 7. It's a logarithmic scale. So you want to make sure that you don't go too low. And sometimes you top up. So to top up, you can use potassium carbonate, or something that is extremely easy to find is baking powder, bicarb soda that you buy from the shops that people use for cleaning or even for making cake, Sorry? Blueberries. Okay. Then here is one of our customers, Leonard. That's his first crop. He was thrilled. He harvested his silver perch. He cooked them with his snow peas from his aquaponic system, and he had some bok choy for salad. He was super happy. Here's his aquaponic system, so you see all the bok choy. And this one is 1.8 by 1.6, so it's still a significant aquaponic system.
How many fish would you have in that?
So it depends on the species you put. If you put trout, I would put 30. You can put 30 to 50. If you put silver perch, you can easily put 100 at the beginning because they take a lot of time to grow.
Can you eat silver perch?
Yes, you can eat them, yeah. So those ones are silver perch. But the problem is they take a lot of time to grow. Those ones, he had to wait 3.5 years to harvest those. A lot of time. He was able to harvest a lot of veggies in between before, but the fish, yeah, had to. And then the second crop after the silver perch, he put trout, and now he's way more happy. All right, that's it. I don't know if there are some questions. Oh. Sure. No, the algae are not an issue. So the algae, they are part of the ecosystem. So if you have an aquaponic system such as this one, for people who don't like to see algae, you are not going to have algae development or wellness. The reason why is because you got a seat, so you block the light from going through. I still leave some little slots between the wooden board, so you still have a bit of light for the fish to be able to sit around, and very often I leave it open, but I can control the algae development. Algae are exactly like plants. If you give them moisture, nutrients, and sunlight, they're going to grow. So there is nothing wrong with them. They are a kind of competition with the plants. They are way more adapted to the plant than the plants to grow in. But to be honest, in aquaponics, we produce a lot of nutrients, so we are happy. It's not an issue to have a little layer of algae. They are not going to be a problem. The fish are going to like it. In a pond, if you have a full pond that is exposed to full sun, then algae can be a problem in a way that they produce oxygen such as the plants, so that's good during the day for the fish. A lot of oxygen in the pond. However, during the night, they stop producing oxygen, but they still breathe. So during the night, they will consume the oxygen, and in the morning, you will see your oxygen level to be very low. So in this case, I really highly recommend to add a little air pump to add some oxygen in the system. But algae technically are not an issue for your aquaponic system, not an issue for your plants, not an issue for your fish. I understand that for some people, it can be, how to say, they don't like seeing algae because they see it as something being dirty, but it's just part of the ecosystem. If you go to a lake, to a pond, to a river, you will always see algae. The more nutrients you have around, and the more algae you will see because there are a lot of nutrients, or they are happy to develop there. But there is nothing wrong with it. So in this system, because we block the light, we're able to manage the algae production, and we can just, if we leave it shut for a week, let's say, it's going to kill the algae, then you can open it again. Yeah.
If you find a dead fish, would you leave it in there or take it out?
No, I would take it out. So basically in aquaponics, as you understand, we feed our fish and we are limited in the quantity of fish we can have due to the quantity of bacteria we have. So if you leave a dead fish, it's going to release a lot of nutrients into the water and it's going to basically take the place of other fish that could be there and could grow. Yeah. Any other question? Yes, potassium hydroxide. Yeah. I mean, you can use one or the other. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you could put lime as well. I don't use lime; it's very strong, but very high calcium. Calcium is good for the aquaponic system, but potassium is a bit better because potassium is part of the three main elements, NPK. So if you can use potassium hydroxide as you use it to raise your pH, you also add some nutrient for the plants. While when you use bicarbonate soda, you add sodium, and sodium can be good for the fish because it decreases the osmosis pressure. I don't think most of you are familiar with osmosis, but the fact is, inside the fish, the salt concentration is quite high. The mineral concentration is quite high, such as us. When we cry, our tears are very salty, yeah? Inside our body, our biological activity is relying on what we call the Krebs cycle. And Krebs cycle rely on potassium. We got a lot of sodium and minerals, and potassium is one of them, in our body. And we got way more concentration in our body than into the water, in fresh water. So what water does naturally, water always tries to dilute salt. That's what we call osmosis. If you have 2 glasses of water aside, you put a pipe in the middle, and you put water in, the level is going to be, of course, balanced. Now, if you add a bit of salt on one side, the water level will increase, because the water is always trying to dilute the salt. Same thing is happening for the fish. The fish into the water, inside the fish you got a high concentration of minerals. The water is always trying to go inside the fish. So the fish always has to regulate this. We call it osmoregulation. Unfortunately, it requires a bit of energy from the fish. If your fish is healthy, that's not an issue. It will be able to do it without any problem. But if we are working with silver perch, as we said before, that is a native fish in winter that is limited in terms of energy, and if you stress it around, the stress plus the osmoregulation will require a lot of energy to the fish. And unfortunately, because it is limited, at one point it might die. So in this case, you can add a bit of sodium into the water to increase the mineral concentration and to decrease the osmosis pressure. But when you do that, you have the problem of some plants not liking sodium, such as strawberries. Strawberries, when you reach 4.5 grams of sodium per liter, they start to struggle and they will not grow as well. In the past, with all the wars we had around the planet, some people, when they were, I'm trying to express myself, it's quite hard. When they were attacking a civilization and they wanted to devastate the civilization to make sure that the civilization could not recover, they were spreading salt around in the field. When you spread a lot of salt in the field, then there is no way to grow some crop, or not many crop will be able to be grown. So that's a way to basically ruin a field. And you don't want to do this in your aquaponic system. So if you add some salt, you want to make sure you don't go over some certain concentration. 3 grams per liter is really the limit. So 3 kilo per 1,000 liters is the limit of sodium you want to have in your system. You can control the mineral and the salt concentration with what we call a refractometer. It's a little tool which is going to give you the concentration in your water. Yeah?
The aquaponics system that you designed.
Yeah.
With the sediments, do you actually have an extra filter that siphons out the sediments, or do you let it build up in the grow bed and clear the grow bed after a year?
Yeah, good question. So this is a basic aquaponic system. You have a water pump inside that is raising the water into the grow bed. As I designed them, you normally plug them straight away. And as you say, sometimes once, after a few years, you need every year to move a bit your grow bed to let the solids, all the organic matter, to go away, and you drain it towards your trees. You need to collect this because this is gold. But you can't have it in your aquaponics system because after a while the concentration is too high. However, there is nothing wrong with adding at the back of this what we call a swire filter, or a way to collect the solids. In this case, it's going to decrease the maintenance you have to add. That's a bit technical, but that's a very good question. Yeah.
You mentioned before that
Yeah.
When you first start the setup, you need to leave it for around a month or two.
Yeah,
So that the whole system can start.
that's right.
Before introducing the fish. Does that mean that the bacteria will automatically come through
Yeah.
during that setup process, and there's no need for you to actually put a culture in?
Yeah, so as we said before, bacteria are present everywhere. So when you put your media in, there will be some on the media, but a lot of bacteria will be present there. You know, there are like billions of species of bacteria. You want some very specific ones. So what you do during this month, you will give some good conditions to the bacteria that are present, to the one you want to grow. And so you will leave them 1 month. In this month, what is going to happen is you're going to have a natural selection. The bacteria adapted to the nutrients they will find and to the condition, moisture and oxygen, will develop. And that's what we call cycling the system. So here, when you start at day 0, what I recommend is to add a handful of fish food in the system. Just 1 handful. And as you're going to go, the bacteria will start to grow on the media. They will find this fish food that is going to be slowly breaking down. The fish food is going to release ammonia. That's what we can see in the first days. We can see ammonia concentration increasing. And after a while, it's going to kind of reach a high spot, and then it's going to decrease. And that's exactly corresponding to the first bacteria, the Nitrosomonas, starting to consume the ammonia and release some nitrite into the water. When those bacteria start to develop, they're going to eat the ammonia, eat it, and after a while, because you just put a handful, after a while, there is no ammonia left. So the ammonia you start with 0 and will end up at 0. Nitrite is the same thing. After a while, because the Nitrosomonas bacteria are eating the ammonia, they release the nitrite, so the nitrite is starting to increase, but then you got the other bacteria, Nitrobacter, that are present. They're going to start to eat it, and then up is decreasing. After 1 month, I say 1 month, it can be more if it's in winter or less if it's in summer. After a while, you will find your water as you put it in. You will find 0 in terms of ammonia and nitrite, but this time you will have nitrate. And the nitrate is the food for the plant. At this stage is a perfect time to introduce your fish, because now you got a bacterial population that is here. The bacteria don't have food anymore at this stage. So they are there, they are in kind of dormancy, they are waiting to get some food. As soon as you put the fish in and you feed your fish, they will be here, and now, because you have built a certain population that is selected, they will straight away adapt to the population of fish you have, to the quantity of fish food and fish waste that they will find. And because you got the nitrate that are starting to grow, it's also a good time to introduce some plants, or wait maybe 1 month and introduce the plants. Yeah.
So you don't, so no fish, no plant until...
Yeah, that's my recommendation, but I know that when you build your first aquaponics system, very often you want to see the fish in straight away. So in this case, you can add a few goldfish, because goldfish are very hardy. They will probably survive, but just be aware that it's not very nice for them. They will go through a hard time. Yeah. Any other question? If there are no other questions, we would go there and have a look at the aquaponics system. I meet you there. Thank you very much.